It's raining outside, so just letting you know that there might be some sounds of rain in the background. So what prompted me to make this video was that I was talking to a friend recently, and she had been listening in on a few people talking about how they were very pro food diet cures and how they were recommending to a friend to really change her diet to cure her cancer. And I don't know if they were always demonizing chemotherapy, but the vibe that my friend got was that they were pretty anti-chemo and they were very pro the food diet, even if there wasn't that much research behind it for that particular cancer diagnosis that person had. And so we just started talking about it a little bit, because I've never had anyone, you know, bring up that kind of conversation with me in person. I've never had someone try to convince me out of doing chemotherapy or try to shame me for, you know, choosing chemo and really trying to push certain food choices onto me. I've had people try to make me healthier, or what they think are healthier food choices, but not so much this kind of like war, I guess, between chemo and food, as if you can only choose one. But in saying that, the only times where I've really had that kind of argument thrown at me is actually through YouTube. There are certain videos of mine, ones that are just more popular, they have more views. I often have a lot of comments under those videos of people, whether or not they're just trolls or just robots or whatever. But there are often a lot of comments underneath those videos where people are really demonizing chemotherapy. They're just saying it's garbage, it's awful, it's poison, that chemo is what kills people, not what, you know, cancer isn't what kills people. And they're often promoting generally pretty radical, extreme diets that will cure your cancer. And when they're arguing against chemotherapy, it's always because, you know, it's unnatural, it's a poison, it will leave you worse off than when you started. They kind of see it as ineffective or very risky because there are so many negative side effects that are both short-term and long-term, whereas food diet cures are seen as really positive thing because they're natural. Often people in those diets become, you know, they want to eat organic things, and that's part of the argument too. There are lots of positive side effects, assuming that you're eating in a balanced way. You'll probably feel better, you know, your hair might grow longer, your skin might clear up. There are all these short-term positive side effects because you're giving your body the nutrients that it needs, and we know that on average people don't eat really well. So if you started eating really well, you're going to see those benefits, and there's pretty much no short-term downside to doing that, to eating better. Although of course, if you want to cure your cancer, if there's no evidence for that, that could be the downside, is that you still have cancer. When I was thinking about this the other day, I realized that empowerment is a big part of this conversation. No one has ever verbalized it in the YouTube comments or when I've heard other people have these kind of conversations, but I think empowerment and you choosing to do something is a really important part of why people often choose a food diet cure versus chemotherapy. Of course, it's not the only reason why someone would choose to do this, but it's just the facet that I want to focus on for the sake of this video. When you decide to do a food diet cure thing, you are really choosing that. No one ever really forces that upon you. As far as I know, that's not a medical recommendation that's often thrown around. You have to do the research about it, and then when you decide to do it, you go out, you buy the groceries, you know, look up the recipes, you cook the food, you make the food, you eat it, you clean it up. You're involved in every part of that. Whereas with chemotherapy, often it's the only treatment option given to you. You just take it because you have to. From the day that you decide to do chemotherapy, you can become really sad because you know what a rough couple of months you're going to have, or even longer. You know that there are so many negative side effects, and I find that chemotherapy, and this is also just my experience, but it was something that was done to me and I just had to survive it. I didn't feel like I was getting up in the morning, that I was going to go out and like do chemotherapy in a way that felt good. I just thought that I had to go to the hospital, sit in the chair, let the drugs go into me, go home and survive the 2 weeks until I started the whole process again. Whereas I could imagine how exciting it would be when you know, if I had chosen to do a food diet cure and I would be getting up every morning, going and doing my exercise, eating all these healthy foods. The foods look really beautiful, they might taste really good if you've looked up some really good recipes. It's definitely an entire lifestyle, and the lifestyle itself is quite active and exciting, and it is a healthy lifestyle. And so there are so many appealing things about a food diet cure that chemotherapy doesn't have. When you're going through chemotherapy, when you are finished with it and you have been cured, you are just so grateful for it to be finished, for it to be done, but you don't take any real, I guess, responsibility or any kind of ownership of the fact that you helped cure yourself by choosing this treatment. Instead, you see it as, oh, the doctors, cured me, the nurses cured me, chemotherapy cured me, even though it also maybe damaged me. Whereas when you choose something like a food diet cure, or people who choose that and maybe their health does improve, they can take full ownership of that. I think it's very empowering because you are like, I did this to myself. I fixed myself. I didn't need any kind of medical intervention, even though technically you still had an intervention. It just wasn't necessarily a medically recommended one. But people are able to take that ownership because I think you feel like you're the author of your story, or you're the hero in your story, because you were actually involved in all the little steps along the way there, and you saw that improvement and progress. Whereas with chemo, you see yourself deteriorate, and you are kind of at the hands of the hospital and the hospital staff. So when it's all done, you don't feel great about yourself in that way. You don't feel empowered. I'm really interested to hear what you guys have to say about the psychological factors that come into choosing certain treatments and the way that we experience certain treatments. Because I don't know, my experience of humans and what I've learned in psychology and all that is that we like to be in control. We like to have a sense of control. We like to feel special. We like to feel that we have a special kind of superpower, or that we're special in some other kind of way. And I feel like the food diet treatment satisfies a lot of those components, a lot of those kind of psychological needs that we have, because there isn't that much evidence supporting it, at least not for most cancers as far as I know. And so if your health does improve, or if you are able to stop your tumor from growing, let's say, you would feel really special. You would be like, wow, everyone said that this wouldn't work, or my doctor said it wouldn't work. My doctor said I wouldn't live, X number of months, but I did. And how did I do it? I did it by changing the way that I ate. I did it by changing my lifestyle, and that was all because of me, and I did all of that. And I think that is a really nice feeling to have. Whereas when people, as I said before, when they go through chemotherapy, they don't have that same kind of reaction. You don't feel like you have much sense of control. You don't feel like you're the hero of your own story. You don't feel like you've saved yourself. And you don't feel particularly special. Because if anything, you feel below average, because you probably have side effects like chemo brain fog, things like that, where you feel like you're less capable than what you used to be capable of, or other people around you. Fatigue stops you from being able to work as much or study as much. Maybe you have more anxiety or depression, stuff like that. So you can feel more damaged as opposed to more special when you come out of chemo. Something else that I've noticed is just the way that people talk about the two camps. Normally people talk about chemotherapy in a really sad way. I've talked about chemotherapy in a sad way, and I've realized that I don't want to keep talking about it in a sad way, because I'm so happy that I did it. I'm so grateful that I had that option, that I could get that treatment, and that now I'm cancer free. That is all I wanted from chemo, and it did it for me, and I don't care about any of the side effects that I have. But I feel like, cancer survivors, people who have gone through chemo or those kind of treatments, don't talk about how positive chemo was because it was so sad, but yet it was positive if they were cured. Ultimately, it was a positive thing if they were cured. And so I think often these kind of conversations that can happen with people who maybe haven't had cancer, haven't known people who have had cancer, they could be a lot more pro the food diet cure, because they've only ever heard negative things about chemo, and they've heard a lot of positive things about the food diet stuff. And so thinking about this has made me more aware about the way that I talk about chemotherapy and my experience with it. So that way I can be a bit more of a positive advocate for it. Of course, I would still tell the truth and be honest about my experience, because it was hard, but that doesn't mean that it was altogether a negative or bad thing, because it cured me. And if it wasn't already clear, I will always support chemotherapy if it is the most evidence-based treatment. I will also support a food diet cure if there's a lot of evidence suggesting that's the best thing to do. But as someone who works in science, as someone who chose to do chemotherapy when I had cancer and it worked out for me, I'll always support the most evidence-based treatment, which at the moment for most cancers, as far as I know, it is either surgery, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, or a combination of those things. Food is really powerful and medicinal in its own right. It can prevent a lot of cancers. There's a lot of research saying that we need to eat healthier and exercise more because that will actually prevent a lot of lifestyle cancers. But once you have cancer, as far as I know, there isn't a large body of evidence suggesting that a food diet cure will cure you. So I just want to reiterate that this video isn't about bashing one side versus the other. I think you need to go for, ultimately, the one with the best evidence, but at the same time, you need to make a decision for yourself about your own life, you know, with your family, with your doctor, with your medical team. And whatever is the best option for you is the best option for you. I just wanted to talk about some psychological stuff that I think we go through when we're trying to choose one over the other. So please let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye.